This film is quite hilarious. There are some moments in this that are absolutely brilliant. My favourite one being the scene where he buys a phone from the guy in the phone shop and watches porn in front of him. He has this remarkable ability to put people in a very awkward and embarrassing situation and get away with it. I think he manages to get away with it with this character specifically because of the naivety the character projects with the perceived language divide, and that gives him a plausible deniability, which means he's able to get away with a lot more than he otherwise would. It's kind of similar with Ali G, but his naivety and his plausible deniability comes from him appearing very stupid by using a class divide instead of a language divide. I suppose they're both kind of like exploiting some sort of cultural divide to get away with being offensive, because it seems like it might be accidental. I mean, the camera crew filming your every move probably helps with making people behave quite passively as well. But it's really interesting watching how he uses this naivety to guide people into going along with things that they probably shouldn't, or just admitting to very, very silly things that they believe. Like how he shows the contradiction with the Trump QAnon supporters, who believe all these crazy conspiracy things, all leading to Democrats being all super evil and shit, but don't show the same skepticism for Republicans who have similar or worse characteristics, like being friends with paedophiles, or literally being paedophiles. Also, with that scene that nearly killed him, how the conservative supporters have a moralistic reasoning for their beliefs, but then freely admit to something immoral if it suits their beliefs, if it happens to benefit them in some way. One valid criticism you could make here is the film's focus on this cognitive dissonance and contradictions largely focusing on one political side, because it is far from a partisan characteristic. It's a very human characteristic to be a contradiction. The main criticism I have, though, that to me makes this film a little bit disappointing, is the film's own dissonance between the storyline and the pranks they filmed in the real world. While I think those pranks are good and they are quite interesting and funny, and sometimes do have something to say or highlight about the way people are, and how contradictory we can be, it just feels like they've threaded them together with a very thin story. It's not really bad, I mean they kind of had to make it into a film, but it's just not really that great. Really, I think this film will probably be reduced down to and remembered as just the clips of those pranks, which in some ways are more interesting without the storyline. So I think it's very likely that that's how it's going to be consumed in the future. Especially not compared to how that scene went down in real life, which I think is more interesting than the storyline that they wrote and they moulded around it. He appeared at this event and got the crowd to sing along with some terrible lyrics that you should probably be ashamed of singing along to with a smile on your face.
What we're gonna do.
A lot like that time he got everyone to sing along in that crowd to throw the Jew down the well. In this film he just leaves the stage and it becomes part of the storyline, where he sort of reunites with his daughter. But what actually happened was, the crowd eventually turned on him and he had to run away, and he had to escape a very angry mob of, well, it must have been Antifa, because no conservatives have ever been violent or threatening, ever. It just can't happen. There's too much Jesus. Maybe that's why they didn't show this bit in the film. You know, because of all the liberal bias and all that evil anti-fascism. What's also kind of weird to think about is that it is filmed in a candid way to get the reactions out of real people, but then those people are all mic'd up. I'm not suggesting that it's faked. I mean, the reactions are way too good and way too natural to be acted. It just looks really weird. And it just makes me think, like, how the hell did these guys not twig that something odd was happening and that this shit wasn't real? Like, it must be a nightmare to make a film like this. Like, you have to get the scene right, you have to hope that you're not going to get the shit kicked out of you whilst you're getting the scene done. Or at least you get the footage you need before you do get the shit kicked out of you. You have to hope that they don't twig and realise what's happening for long enough to get what you need. Then you need to get them to sign a release form after everything's done and filmed, so you can actually use the footage. It's no wonder the storyline's so thin. They'd have no choice but to have it as mostly an afterthought. The scale of some of the pranks are quite impressive. Like the scene where he interrupts Mike Pence's speech at CPAC. The story bit here is really kind of nothing, but the prank itself is really quite something. Not for the content of it, but the fact that he managed to get in at all, and then managed to actually disrupt the event. And that it even got on the news and no one knew it was him until the film was released. So they let him in a fat suit, took him out of the event after he disrupted the event in his fat suit, and then they just let him go with no investigation or anything. Like, that should be really quite worrying, right? I mean, that's quite the security breach. And then the other one, which was like the big marketing moment for the film, where they honeypot Rudy Giuliani by having a sycophantic conservative journalist who is in no way like anyone in Fox News or OAN, being nice to him and touching him and suspiciously partisan. And then him in no way liking that and then taking her into the bedroom and then only tucking his shirt in. I don't know why you'd think anything else was happening in that situation. He's very clearly and naturally tucking his shirt in, it's obvious. Because, you know, no politician or creepy guy has ever taken advantage of a young woman whose career could be made or broken depending on whether or not she, That's never happened, ever. Oh, poor Rudy, eh? He must have thought all his Christmases were coming at once when a young attractive woman was touching him and being suspiciously nice to him. I'd have been tucking my shirt in too.
You dirty, dirty bastard.
This whole thing is so interesting to me for just how easy it seems to be to get to these powerful people. Like, this guy is so close to the Trump administration, and Trump personally, and he got duped by a fake news group because I guess they were just saying nice things to him, and they must be really desperate for that, I guess. But bear in mind, this is the same guy who did do that press conference outside of a landscaping company across the road from the dildo shop. And these are the guys you choose to be in charge of the world. You do have to give it to Sasha though, for still trying to do satire in a world that's already more ridiculous than the satire you could ever make. Like, this film has some good pranks in it on the Trump administration, but the pranks that they do to themselves are way more hilarious than anything Sasha could have ever done. Unless it was Sasha who booked the press conference by the dildo store.
Oh my goodness! Wow!
This film isn't great, but it is quite fun and it is enjoyable to watch. Maybe not so much if you're really hyper into the whole political sports team thing, and you're really into Team Red Tie. But for normal people, it's pretty funny, I guess. It's not better than the first film, but you probably will still enjoy it. I'd say it's a 7 out of 10.